Hello, hello. Welcome to our third live stream. First of all, most important question, can you actually hear us?
You would say that's important, yes.
Okay, very good. I see in chat that we are here. Okay, then welcome to our third developer live stream. This stream is all about your questions. We will try, but probably fail, to answer all the questions you can find in chat. Of course, questions related to OpenTTD in some way. I mean, we can probably get some more questions, but we don't really want to answer them. Okay, so I'm Michi CC. Beside me on stream today, we have LordAro, Timberwolf, and TrueBrain. Those of you who've been here in previous streams have seen everybody at least once. If not, a very short introduction. LordAro today, developer, and according to him, his most visible OpenTTD contribution is the text file viewer.
Sounds legit.
Close enough.
Yeah, and he prepared most of the 1.11 release this time. So next up, Timberwolf. He has a bit OpenTTD contributions, but I think mostly he's known for his new graphs in various trains, roads, and everything else. And TrueBrain has done, well, too many OpenTTD contributions to list here.
I've been here too long.
Well, he's probably rewritten everything somewhere in some place in some time. So it's a very list. And well, you might have seen from me that I've done some stuff like path signals and other not so visible things. Okay, as a short introduction, I mean, we don't know yet how many people will turn up to ask questions. So we'll see, depending how busy it is, we might not be able to get to every question. We'll have to see how that is. Also, to make sure it's not too boring for everybody, very basic gameplay questions and very extreme technical details might not be the best thing to ask on here. But if nobody else has a question, then of course you can still fire them up.
Let's say it's not okay if I open Visual Code and just go to a certain line to show what it does, or?
Depends. I mean, if that's the only question that's on, then of course.
Okay.
So other than that, I think I've talked enough for now. So let's open the floodgates in chat. We'll see what comes up.
I have the first question, if you don't mind. It comes from LordAro. I don't know who he is. He asked what the correct pronunciation is of new giraffe. So I think that's a very valid question because I don't know the answer.
We did the disagreement episode already.
Do we have a disagreement counter?
Oh, we have a Mythbusters.
Oh, no, just a Mythbusters.
So how do you guys pronounce it?
New giraffe.
New graph?
It's not a graph.
Probably new graph, I think.
It's not a graph. It's not even referencing a graph. So I have issues with that. Right.
Exactly.
Okay.
Sorry, Michi, go for it.
Yeah, let's see. Okay, question by Felder 9000. Will there be new features added regularly, or it's mostly maintenance bug fixes? That's actually, it depends. I mean, OpenTTD is a volunteer project. So in the end, it basically depends on who turns up to do something. I mean, there's no fixed roadmap or something. So it really depends if somebody codes or does something that's nice to include. But of course, I mean, we will sure, of course, add features if there's something nice to add. So definitely.
And as far as our versioning go, we tend to have we have now 1.11 released, and every one in the 1.11 release, so 1.11.1, 0.2, etc., are mostly bug fixes, small things that we fix. If we really like it, we want to sneak in a feature, but we tend not to, and we try to keep everything for 1.12. So that's a big new hello again. So next one, I would just pick if we would just one by one pick a question, I think that's more than fair. So let's see. I have a note, so it's not a really question. You should add an option to buy the game if you want to help the devs. Although we really appreciate that you want to buy the game. This game really is for free, and I hope it will always be till the end of time. At least I think most of the developers strongly agree that it should be. But of course, if you want to donate, we're more than happy with any donation you can give. You can find that on our website. But the game on Steam will always simply be for free, just because it's a free game.
There are some places where the interface text is very tiny compared to the rest. Any plans to fix it? Well, there is a interface overhaul to some extent in plans, but secret. But in general, there are 2 times font size options in the game options window, which covers most cases.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, I wouldn't really say there are plans in the sense, but yes, we know that something like a proper font selection GUI would not be a bad idea.
I think the other problem that we have currently OpenTTD is pixelated, and with that we have either 1 zoom, 2 times zoom, or 4 times zoom. There's nothing in between, and sometimes you just want this 1.5 or this 2.25 or I don't know what. We don't support that yet, but I think that will be very valuable to the game to have this, well, not very large, like, oh my God, it's in my face, and not this, what is there, kind of effect. But yeah, nobody has done that yet. So I'm interested if someone can cook up something that will work.
Okay, I see something about new graph road stops. I think there's a pull request on GitHub for that, but I'm not sure how ready that actually is. I mean, I have to look at it. I know there was some stuff done, but probably it's not finished yet.
Someone is working on it at least, and he has been working on it for quite some time, so that's always promising.
Yeah, so roads is a really good example with the question about do you do bug fixes or features. Quite often features ends up also generating a bunch of bug fixes which are needed. And I think with road types, we kind of introduced those. And there are a few things which it works, but there's lots of corner cases and things you run into quite quickly. So with road stops, it's there, it's good, it's on its way in, but we want to kind of make sure that it really works well. In fact, I think my only probably really visible contribution is that road stops actually work when you place them in towns and out of towns, because originally the road stops didn't respect the town zone, which was, I discovered it when I created a road set which had different roads in town and out of town. You know, it's like, hang on, why does my road stop in the middle of town suddenly have rutted, muddy tracks? But yes, it's coming. It'll hopefully be there for 112 if you get that pull request.
Be careful with such promises.
Well, I rod for my own back, right? That means if it gets to sort of August, September, and it's not there, then you know you can go and scream at me. Timberwolf, go and make new graph road stops presentable.
We will remind you.
This is recorded, so this will be fine. I see a few questions which I quite like. Are there official trains in the base game? And questions related to it, that's we have this nice tram tab, but if you don't know how to download trams, you will never be able to use them. I think it's one of these things. In OpenTTD, you also have this issue, what do we add to the base game? And that's always a hot debate. We added tram tracks, so you always can have tracks in every game, but we didn't add the vehicles, so you cannot have the tram itself in the game. You have to download something for that, which is quite unclear, I would say, to new players. And I think we have found more in the last few weeks that are pretty unclear to new players that we have to address. I think this is one of them. One thing we will avoid, I would guess, I'm looking at the other devs here, is to add trams in the base game itself, because that means we have to pick one, and then we have this argument, which one are we going to pick? And it will piss off one new DRF author over the other, I guess. But we do have to make it easier for you to understand that you don't have that and how you can get it. And I can have a long
There's
talk
the
about
idea of balancing game, adding new stuff as well, and game balance, where normally we can just farm that out to new draft developers, which is much easier.
Just let them care about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a similar thing with stuff like AI and game scripts. It's basically, if we include something, then we are basically picking favorites, which is also probably very not good for everybody else, because I would assume that the vast majority would then not try any other AI, for example.
Yeah, and one of the things we're thinking about is a concept we call presets. And I wrote a lot of things about it already, but it's mostly on the background, where we just want to make it easy that one person prepares a complete feeling of a new game, like what's the climate, what year do you start in, which new DRFs are loaded, is it a scenario, yes or no, what kind of settings do you have, and that as a gamer you can just load this whole preset in at once and play that game. So we can have other people tailor how you would like the game to be, and you can say, I like this or like it not, but you don't have to go through all this stuff yourself. That's something we're slowly working on, but it's difficult. I hope that answered all the 3 questions I had about trends.
Okay, let's pick the next one. A short question, because I've seen somebody ask if we are the devs of OpenTTD. Just wanted to ask, we are some of the devs of OpenTTD. There are a lot more contributors than just us, so just to make sure that we are not leaving anybody out. So there are a lot more than just us 4 here.
Most of us aren't that special.
Okay, and then because I've seen one, and I think a similar question in this case about either signals on bridges, tunnels, and turns on bridges. Let's put it that way. I mean, the one question was, would implementing turns on bridges like in locomotion be remotely possible without rewriting a large part of the game? So this is a clear no. It's only possible by rewriting quite a bit. And frankly, at least for bridges, for turns on bridges, I would actually say, well, there's a reason that this is OpenTTD and not OpenLoco, which also exists, by the way. So I don't think we are actually going to add something like this to the game, simply because then we could also contribute to open locomotion. Signals on bridges and tunnels is a bit of a different thing, which, well, I know it does
exist, but it's a hack.
Yeah, I mean, JGR Patchback has something from that, which is technically a bit of a hack.
Been around for a long time, I think.
And I mean, I wouldn't completely exclude that, but there's definitely no fixed plans to do that in any form in the future. But I wouldn't categorically exclude that.
There's a thing which makes it difficult, and I hope none of the other devs are going to suddenly facepalm when I explain this, which is that when a vehicle goes into a tunnel or a bridge, it effectively enters the bridge or the tunnel dimension. So a bridge just consists of a starting point and an ending point, and then a bunch of quite clever hacks from 1994 to make it look like a vehicle is proceeding on the map. But actually, it's gone through a wormhole, it's gone somewhere completely else, and it just proceeds in a straight line until it comes down the other side. And so you see things like vehicles don't overtake on bridges, there's other stuff they can't do. And that's what makes the things like signals very difficult and turns very difficult, because as far as the game, as far as the map is concerned, that bridge just doesn't exist. So how do you put signals on something that doesn't exist, which is just basically a vehicle pretending to be on a bridge?
Do I want to mention the words map array? But
oh, you had to. Yeah, nice explanation, Timberwolf. That's quite
Yeah,
accurate.
that's good.
And of course, there's also actually the gameplay side, because at the same time, making sure that bridges and tunnels aren't a complete replacement for normal tracks is also a gameplay dimension. So you can't just, like, if you don't have enough space, you can't just put 3 bridges on top of another and plop signals on. So it's actually a gameplay thing that's actually a bit of a challenge, that you can't just do everything with a bridge or tunnel.
Okay, next question, just because I think it's a nice question I don't know the answer to. Does a refinery convert 100% of the oil to goods? Yes.
I think it's a linear
Times wrong.
mapping, but yeah, it's not obviously not one-to-one, but I think it's a linear map from
I mean,
put in 2, get 1 out.
Frankly, no idea what the default refinery does, but in general, this is also for all new graphs. Basically, there's a defined ratio from input to output for this industry. Whether it's actually one-to-one, no idea.
Someone is now typing in Discord, so I think we will get the answer in a tiny bit. These kind of details, that so few people know that. It's you only know it when you look up the code, basically. The refinery converts 100%, but it depends on the station rating how much arrives. There you have it. Thanks, Frost.
Of course, fickle station rating. Let's take this one from Perez Didac. Sure. As a dev, how can I catch up with what's going on with so many communication channels? GitHub, the ancient TT Forums website, Discord, IRC. In my opinion, GitHub should be the centralized authority, but is it really? I mean, yes, GitHub is probably if the communication regarding an issue or a feature is not in GitHub, then yeah, it's going to get lost. That's quite key. So if you're messaging someone on Discord or IRC or TT Forums, wherever, if it's only there, it's probably not going to go anywhere. It's going to get forgotten. As for where discussion about development happens, that's trickier subject, and it's generally wherever. IRC is quite common for most existing devs, just because we're all old-fashioned and stuck in our ways. But
he says we, but he mostly means him and Frost, just to be clear. But continue.
Take my terminal from my cold dead hands.
Yeah, but to add that, basically, the intention is that everything that's actually important or where we would expect somebody in the future to want to know about it, that it should be in GitHub. This is at least the intention.
And lately we have been sitting on that a bit more than we used to, because, well, when I picked up a lot of pull requests 4 months ago, I got a lot of answers like, that has been talked over in ISC. I'm like, yeah, do you want me to go back in the logs and find that discussion, or what's the idea here? So lately we have been, when someone types something on ISC, also copy paste on GitHub just to make sure it's also there. That's not always going as it should, but I try to pay more attention to that. I know others do that too. So some people get a lot of duplicated information and complain about that, but it's getting there. GitHub should contain all the information, and if not, you should slap us. Basically that.
And not really the same, but in a sense related. I've seen a question by Erato about it jumps on the title screen, because I've just seen on GitHub a discussion where it's actually talked about that. And I'm going on a bit of a longer tangent here. I mean, this is like with many other things, like why can't we have X or or whatever for feature? I mean, mostly the limit on can we have feature X is actually, yes, we can, as long as somebody turns up and does the work. So this is actually the limiting factor for most of these kind of things. So if somebody turns up and does the work, then yes, we definitely can have screen jumps on the title screen.
I think this kind of thing, if done properly, let's assume that the code is fine, nobody will object to it, but it will be hard to find someone that wants to spend time on it. And if you can get that bridge, it will be in. I think that in general holds for most of our work. If nobody objects, it will get in. It's not about if anyone agrees with you, it's more like nobody disagrees with you, which is a quite interesting way of developing a game, to be honest. But
yeah, I mean, basically the most important gatekeeper is those who turn up to do something have mostly already made half the way to the goal, I think.
Apparently, steel mills and farms also accept passengers, which is news to me.
Well,
Why would you ever try that?
They do on some tiles. Why they do, I think only Chris Sawyer knows that. Nobody knows why. They just do.
accept this reality. So are there any special plans for a 20K, like we did on a 10K? For those who weren't around when we hit 10K commits in Subversion, we had a big party at some German person's house. I won't give his name or location, but it was quite nice. And so we got together there. We had a big cake. Someone made a cake with R10,000 on it. The joke was the revision R10,000 never existed. It was impossible to create that. I might have made it impossible. But so we had a nice cake. So now the question is, what are we going to do for 20K? I liked the suggestion a few weeks ago that we go to Hawaii, but that means we need more donations. So donate now and let us go to Hawaii. No, I'm joking. Now, currently we are in the Corona shit. Sorry for the word, but yeah, that's what it is. So a get-together is not something that will happen, but I think we really should do that when we can again, just for people to get together again and talk about OpenTTD and in a more, with a barbecue and a beer. We know a location. I hope he still lives there. A wonderful place, big outdoor inside yard. Oh, it was lovely. We should do that, honestly. And why Germany, we found out that it's the most central of most of the developers. It's quite crazy, but it's about the longest trip for everyone to get to there. It's just nice. So who knows? But we have nothing planned. So if you want to plan something, let us know.
So I think we might have actually shifted a bit more to the Netherlands with some more British people around.
That's fair. We now have British people. What do we do with them? They can't get in the main country, the main part of Europe. Sorry, Arrow. We won't
Fine,
joke
I won't
about
come and
it.
eat your cake.
So I will pick the next one because I like it. We implement tutorials. I think it's one of the biggest things we notice with the Steam release, that it's really hard to get in the game. And that might sound silly, but it's something that's really easy to forget as a developer. I've been working on this game for 17 years. So telling me that the game is hard to learn, that's something that takes me a second to realize, oh yeah, if I wouldn't know anything about this game, this might be hard. I think that's one of the biggest realizations, that it's just hard to get in there and that we need some kind of guidance. How do you get started? What is a train? What are signals? Why should you use PBS and nothing else? Just forget about the rest. How do you get from there? How to do it? The original tutorials were nice, but very limited in what they could do. We've suggested YouTube movies, which is fine, I guess. It works for a lot of games. But personally, I would like a bit more handholding, press here, look at this button. I saw this other day on Steam that someone did not know you could hold the save icon to get a drop-down menu to exit the game. That for me was like, oh, wait, that is indeed the 1994 interface style. We are not used to that anymore. So I can fully understand where he's coming from. Just never realized that could be an issue. So I would personally love some kind of tutorial. I have no clue how we're going to do that. Like zero clue.
I can see it being done via some sort of game script, but yeah, needs some work.
Yeah. So if someone is interested, please, and otherwise it is on our agenda.
Okay. Once again,
do you plan to do something with timetables and cargo aging? Andy, is that you?
So for those, this may be a bit of an IRC in joke, but Andy has sort of obviously been previous live streams, has been doing a lot of investigation into cargo aging, into what actually happens when you enable it, because cargo is not. It's actually more complex than people realize, because there is a sort of, when you look at the cargo aging graph, you see it sort of goes along in a line, then it goes along a bit of a steeper line, and then it either steepens or flattens out and hits an age. And what that means is that when you change the cargo aging, which is how New Graph offers, say this is supposed to be an express coach, it's more luxurious, or this is supposed to be a sort of metro or suburban coach, so it's less luxurious. What it does is it scales that cargo payment graph horizontally. So it either says it's going to decline steeper or it's going to decline flatter. But you have some weird situations in that, which is if you deliver your cargo in fewer than 10 days, if you change the cargo aging, it doesn't make any difference, because the first tick of that cargo aging just doesn't happen. So it doesn't matter if you have a really quick route. It doesn't. You can make a vehicle as luxurious as you like. It won't actually make any more money. And at the opposite end of the scale, if your cargo sort of fully ages, if it does that, whatever it is, 255 days, so from that point, it's just a flat rate payment. It's decayed as far as it's ever going to decay. And so over a long enough route, you get to a point where speed doesn't matter and cargo aging doesn't matter. It's purely just capacity. So cargo aging that's why it's been a big discussion for us, because we've been trying to think, well, how is that going to work? How do you actually make it work? And there's the viewpoint of like my viewpoint, which is just put something in. It works in kind of 70% of cases, and smoke and mirrors, and sort of players will kind of fill in the rest and go, well, it looks like it's working, so it must be working. Andy's a much more diligent balancer than me, and his view is, say, look, actually, I want to be able to control the economic model completely. Just rip out the whole cargo transportation aging thing and say, let the train decide how much profit it made.
Well, Andy at times might also be not just more diligent, but also more radical.
Yes, yeah. Andy very much like, I want this to work, and now what is needed to make it work, even if that's like just a way out there idea.
I see so many nice questions. It's sometimes hard to pick which one to do next. Sorry, Michi, you go for it.
Yeah, we could do a double one. I think one was asked, how much time do we spend developing and how much time do we spend playing, and also how and in which way we like to play.
Let's do a round. I'm curious.
Yeah, let's start. I think actually I used to play, then I started developing, and then I'm usually not playing anymore, because, or actually almost, if I do start the game, it's 90% of the time it's to check something or to test something. But if I would indeed play, I'm actually a really old school player. So not too large maps, usually DBZXL, one of the few remaining things that's actually not on the content download servers. And and build reasonably nice maps that are somewhat realistic, I'd say. Not really realistic, but somewhat realistic.
Yeah, it's quite similar. I played a lot till I started developing, then it dropped a lot. And I mostly play to test around the thing I'm changing, and then a bit around that. At least I try. I don't always succeed, which gives this lovely problem that you can solve one problem, but with doing that, create a completely different problem. If you just played the game for 10 minutes, you would have figured out. But lucky enough, we have testers that will tell us in very colorful words that we were wrong and that we should fix it. But mainly lately, I've been trying to play the game. And then the fun thing hits when you really try to play it and you want to play it with a friend and you notice that you can't join each other's game because you're both behind a not firewall. you start to realize that a lot of players have this issue and you should resolve it. So I spent the last week trying to resolve that issue instead of playing again. Let's hope when I fix that, I can play a bit again instead of finding the next problem trying to fix that.
It's a common problem for sure. When was the last time any of us actually played through the whole game? It's been a while.
I'm the outlier here because, of course, I do actually play it quite a bit. And
Yeah, I do.
the actual thing is I kind of it's probably why a lot of my new graph stuff is just slapdash, just get it out, because I actually build those things to play with myself. And it effectively, nobody clip that, play with myself, please. Keep it family. Yes, but I play a lot because, of course, I stream the thing, and I think anybody who's watched that will realize my play style is ongoing disaster, where everything I do to influence it just makes it gradually worse until eventually there's just a 400 train logjam. But yes, yeah, I play it a lot, and I do a lot of the sort of the large maps and new graphs all over the place and whatever. You probably see as well the same with my contributions. Like most of the things which I've contributed to OpenTTD have been, this is something which actually annoys me as a player, and I want to fix, and whether it's sort of little road stops or performance things. That leads on to one of the other questions we had, actually, which is, how do we decide? Because obviously the tutorials is the same problem, right? Most of us here are very sort of long experienced, old school players, who've been around in some cases playing it since since the Chris Sawyer versions came out. And you miss the things like tutorials because you're like, well, I already know how to play the game. I don't need to be taught how to do the basics. And things like Steam, where you suddenly get a lot of new players, are a shock because you suddenly see a lot of people hitting the discussion forums and going, oh, I have this problem. I have this problem. You go, oh, yes, you're actually probably quite right. That is legitimate. So there was a question like, how do we get that feedback? How do we understand what kind of the players want?
Well, there's a question to the public or a question to us?
There's a question to us. And don't ask me to answer it, because my is terrible, which is I will just do what I want, and occasionally someone suggests something that I also want, so I'll just do that as well.
But it's actually probably the truth. So I mean, usually we do what we want. That's probably the answer for that.
Yeah, I mean, even just someone else's suggestion, it might tickle someone's fancy, and they take it up, and that'd be good. Sure.
Yeah, but of course, I mean, in the end, we are all volunteering, so nobody's getting paid for this. So in the end, it has to be fun for us too. So if we don't like it or can't imagine something useful with it, then it's probably we're not going to pick it up. So it has to be something that can be fun to do.
And it can be crazy things that are fun to do for us. For example, this one on the left of me wrote OpenGL. That's not something that you can think, oh, that has to be fun, but he had fun with it. And we have all these things that we can do, like, why did you have fun with that? We can be really, really crazy in that regards. Take it as a compliment, by the way, just to be clear.
Yeah. Oh, well, I mean, of course, I mean, fun depends on the point of view. I mean, it's not like you can talk. I mean, you're also like, oh, come on, can't we just completely rewrite threading in the game loop? That has to be fun.
Well, it was fun.
And
but how else were we supposed to achieve 1 million frames per second? I mean,
and while on the way, rewrite half the operating system backends of OpenTTD, because why not?
Exactly. What I like related to this question are basically two questions that we have. Is one, what is the next thing that we want to do for OpenTTD? And the other is, oh shit, I forgot which one. Well, let's do that one first. I'm quite curious what you guys are working on. What's the next thing? Oh, will I take it myself? Sorry, that's always nice to do. Currently, I'm working on making networking easy, that you can join each other's game without setting up port forwarding and all that stuff that nobody really understands. So we can also work slowly toward what we call rich presence integrations. So things like Discord or Steam that you can just right click, join a game, and don't bother about it. But it's so difficult. But we will get there. We will get there. It will be better, I hope. And I hope that boosts the multiplayer a bit, because I think it's a bit disappointing how difficult it is. It's not of this day anymore, of this year, whatever. That's my thing. Ishi.
Oh, yeah, probably. I mean, I'm trying to get some more of my old, literally years old backlog more or less done. I mean, even OpenGL was like, I mean, the first commit was like, I don't know, 5 years ago or something I ever did for that. Someday, somewhere in a nice and bright future, I might actually revisit yet another cargo destinations. I also have a map array rewrite branch somewhere lying around, and some other fun stuff.
I don't have any sort of grand plans like that. I mean, it's more, well, what was I currently working on? I'm just removing some of the really old code, which is no longer necessary, and just general tidying of old code, which just doesn't, it's either not performant as it could be, or is much too big compared to what it should be, and so forth. And just generally looking at, oh, that bug looks interesting. Let's see what caused that and see if I can fix it.
Our housekeeper, basically. It's quite
Pretty
needed
much.
and quite appreciated. Like, for example, did you know that if the README you're trying to load is bigger than, how many lines was it? It will fail to load.
It's 6,000-ish, assuming your font size is 10 pixels.
And then guess how big our own README is.
A little bit bigger than that. But only on some platforms. It doesn't crash on some platforms, which is weird because it should.
So Timberwolf.
Oh, yes, because of course, I think the next thing for me, and this is an announcement the first time it's probably in public, is probably not going to be the OpenTTD features, but it is going to be boats and ships. And that's basically the story of a lot of my development, which is Andy put me up to it, and Andy says, "Look, I'm fed up with boats. I've tried it 3 times. You go have a try at it. See if making sterns and bows in voxels is any more fun than doing it in pixels."
Okay.
He very briefly joined. Sounded like I summoned him.
Yeah, Andy tried to sneak in. We don't accept that, Andy. Stay out.
He disturbed our very sprites.
He's annoying my OBS settings. I don't like that.
Oh, and actually, talking about Andy seeing near times plans, I actually might. I was earlier today working on some, let's call it crackpot pull request about cargo aging. Maybe I'll push that later. So, but it's probably a very bad idea.
Well, we're doing rounds anyway. Another question I really liked. What was the most controversial implementation of a feature change? Well, for the whole developer team, but for us four, what was the most? Which one do you regret most, I would say? Well, okay, let me start off first. Sorry. For me, it is, sorry, Michi, extra zoom. 30 BPP extra zoom is something I worked with it to get it to happen, to make it happen. I think it's the worst thing to OpenTTD. And why? Because it kills the look and feel of the game. The game should be pixelated, it should be blurry, it should not be this fine detail of a tank wagon, which you can see in the hood on the wagon. It's nice, but it's not OpenTTD in my opinion. So I regret helping and making possible for that to happen.
Well, I don't hate it, but yes, I mean, it's partly my fault too, because I've actually written the stuff that makes it possible to ship one graph file with all the zoom and stuff instead of for those that are long enough here to remember that there used to be a method where you could have side-loaded PNG files for 32 BPP. So I'm not without fault in that.
I mean, it is a big shame because there were a lot of graphics in that format, that old style format, which just never got converted due to either licensing or lack of interest or whatever. and it is a shame to have effectively lost much of that. Because I was involved in organising it at the time. It's pre-developer days, but yeah, no fault of anyone involved. But if we did have more of that, it probably would feel more complete if there were more giraffes of that size scale.
So you have any regrets to add to that, Arrow?
I don't know about regrets as such. I can't think of anything. Certainly nothing that I've done.
Do you want to look me up in the history to point out which one I
Yeah.
regret you did? Or no.
Oh, actually, I don't know if regret, but on the other hand, anybody who's seen Andy currently texting in Discord or so, then I do get slight regrets that this cargo aging thing is actually my fault.
What I like most about developing for OpenTTD, we are all very blunt in what we think we did wrong. We don't. If you hear a developer bitching about code, it's very likely he wrote it himself. It's just almost certain that's the case. Timberwolf, what do you regret?
So I think everyone is already heard by parameter explosion in road vehicles. I think was the one where and talk about enthusiasm, like that actually really hurt my enthusiasm for doing things, because I was just everything I did was a bug. The other one is probably the speed up for sets which use log vehicles and use that sort of free articulated vehicles in one to do extra log trains. I didn't regret it when I started it, and I don't regret it now. But while I was in the middle of that, I did deeply regret it, because that, and while I was developing that, I had so many times where I was up until sort of midnight, 1 a.m. or whatever, just staring at a train which had a missing rectangle at the corner of it, or some other small thing.
So many edge cases to that bit of code. So hard
Yes.
to get right. You did really good.
Speaking of similar things, there was a question not long ago if we would ever put in day length into trunk. We haven't yet, but it's a prime candidate for something to regret later, because it also has 2 billion edge cases and at least probably 20 different kinds of day length that you can think of, and everybody wants a different kind. So it's something that's high on the list to regret later on.
What I do like about the day length patch, everyone talks about it, but when you zoom in on it, they not talk about the same thing. So one person means like this corner of changing the game, and the other means like this corner, and they all call it the same, and most mean some slightly different things. So I think as soon as there's consensus what they mean, the implementation will be relatively easy. But getting that consensus, indeed, that is the part of regret.
So just to make that clear, of course, I mean, that doesn't mean we are opposed and would never add it, but it means that whoever wants to add it probably has to have quite a long breath to get it to the finish line.
Yeah, related to that question, and the question I liked is about, do you plan to raise some limits? And then there are examples like 4K map limit. Well, talking about requests, a 4K by 4K map is really pushing any system out there. Playing multiplayer on 4K by 4K, we should never have allowed that, to put it bluntly. It's just too much. It was back in 2005, I believe, it got added. It's still too much now. We have so much work to do before such maps become possible. So increasing that limit, if anything, we might decrease it and make the other one like, ooh, really big warning, please don't use this unless you really know what you're doing. So these limits, I don't think they will be raised anytime soon, but not because we technically can't, but simply because gameplay technical, there are so many issues to resolve first.
Yeah, I mean, technically, at least for maps, I mean, JGR patchback has 8K by 8K, so it's technically possible, but it doesn't make that much sense from a gameplay sense.
I like the thing that
fit everything in.
I liked what was told like yesterday, I believe. on a 4K by 4K map played with 128 players, and you'll most likely never see each other. It's like, yeah, especially multiplayer in 4K by 4K, the added value, we haven't been presented in use case like, and this is the added value of doing that. And Ivan, I'm very happy you can run 4K by 4K fine. I can tell you that most people won't be able, at least not when they have like 100 trains, the game starts to already sluggish, etc.
Yeah, it is 256 by 256 maps. It's vast.
Yes.
And honestly, we could probably get away with just saying, yeah, this is 4K by 4K, and actually making it 2K, and no one would actually notice.
Just silently make it smaller.
That's almost certainly a regret in the making.
Yes.
Like the number of villages bug requests that I've had where someone's, and it used to be like this increasing scale. I think the first one was someone was playing on a really dense 2K by 2K, and they had enough towns that was more than I'd ever tested with. And I fixed that, and I got the next one, which was I think a 4K by 4K, and they're like, yeah, this now breaks. And then I fixed that, and then eventually I got someone I think with JGR, and they had an 8K by 8K, and even my computer, I think I only had one computer in the house that could load the thing, and then actually do anything useful with it. But yeah,
I mean, actually, I have to see. Original map is 256 by 256, and the 4K by 4K map is actually 256 times original maps. So it's a lot more.
So we're happy that anyone that enjoys the kinds of games, and please, you do you. But from a development point of view, it's one of these things that is on the edge of functional. I think it's a nice summary. Shall we do some Steam questions, Michi?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Well, we had a lot of Steam questions. We have not been ignoring them, but it's something to tackle all at once. But before I do, I'm wondering, so OpenTTD is on Steam. How many times do you think people got a free license from that? And let me put something on Twitch.
You should define free license.
Yeah, free license is when someone clicks in Steam the game that it wants in its library. It doesn't mean it downloads the game. So that's a bit of a weird difference in Steam. So how many?
So it's like buying the game, but because it's free, it's not.
Exactly. So I made a poll, and I'm quite curious to see how many people think which way. So if you have some time, fill in the thing, please. In the meantime, I will get it on my screen.
I just saw why
I think everyone went to sleep. Sorry, you want to say?
Yes, while we're doing that, I just saw one question that's worth answering, which is sounds that changed in 1.11, which have actually changed in OpenSFX. And the reason behind that is licensing. We had a contributor who I feel really, this is a regret actually, because we had a problem on forums with a lot of people coming in and just being like, really, your game is broken, it's awful, these are all the reasons, you've got to fix it, and I had one of those points where I hit a limit, and I was just like, please, can you stop doing this to someone? And the same person actually went and did a load of work researching sounds for OpenSFX and fixing things which were on old Creative Commons licenses that would have caused problems for not just us, but would have caused problems for people using them to stream, to play the game, to do anything sort of show it commercially, whatever. So I do regret that, which is chewing out someone that I thought, oh God, it's another one of these, I'm going to just complain. And it was someone who actually went and fixed a load of licensing. So that's the reason for the sound changes, is they're now fully Libre free licenses, which is a nice improvement.
It's very awesome.
And hopefully the sounds are actually good too.
Yeah.
Just different.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, there's definitely overlap in the persons, but in the end, OpenGFX, OpenSFX, MSX, or ZBase, ABase are separate projects. So there's of course quite a bit of overlap in persons that do that, but they are in principle separate projects. So So just because something changes in OpenTTD or changes in the other is not necessarily always related. So it also means, I mean, you don't need to know any programming to contribute. If you can draw or make music or make sounds, there are also those projects to help out with.
I could lead on from that one. Is I did see a question a long time ago saying, is there any something along the lines of, is there any way of and the average layperson being able to make a new GRF? So if someone can draw but can't code or is unwilling, because I mean it's not easy making a UGRF from scratch, even from NFO certainly, and NML isn't the easiest thing in the world for someone who's doesn't know what has no experience of such things. Is there any way of doing that? And I think the answer is currently no. I think there was something a long time ago, I believe, which automated a lot of stuff for you, to make the simple, this is a vehicle with this name and this capacity stuff. But I think that died or no longer works on modern systems or something like that.
Yeah,
certainly something we could interested in.
Graph Maker, but it was never updated for any of the more current features.
That too.
It's one of those situations which improves every so often. It improves, and it improves in a huge leap. So, for example, NFO to NML is a huge improvement in how the accessibility of making graphics. If you've tried making something in NFO like stations, for example, that is hard work until you get used to it. But it's like the difference between programming an assembly language and programming in a high-level language. When you're doing NML, it's like the high-level language, but you're still having to do programming. And I did see on the forums, I think someone's actually looking at making essentially a drag and drop NML, which says for the simple use cases, which is I just want a vehicle sprite and I just want sort of a normal vehicle, that can be made sort of fairly drag and drop, fairly easy. So hopefully those tools are coming. And I a little bit of I've helped but not really helped with things like GoRender, where it's helped people like me who apparently seem to have no 2D artistic talent whatsoever, but seem to do quite okay in 3D. So that has helped, but that's still a very esoteric tool, and I will openly admit that to use GoRender, you have to be a bit of a techie and a bit of an expert and a bit willing to put up with sort of idiosyncrasies of someone who just created it thinking, oh, no one's ever going to use this. And you see, it's good. You see the community support it very well. But I would love, apart from the fact that I wouldn't love the AWS bill, I would love a thing of a GoRender, which was just a web app where you just say, I'm just going to upload a voxel model and it's just going to give me the sprites. And I don't have to deal with all of this tuning manifests and getting it running in the command line and all of that. So
right in JavaScript. Fine.
Yeah, also to be fair, you have to also say, I mean, NML is higher level than info, but it's still not that much of a high level. So there's still much room above to make better things.
I rage quit on my last attempt, so I won't comment on this. This is, by the way, how the development channel mostly goes. We were talking about Steam. Somehow we got distracted and ended up talking about automating UDRF building. That's quite common for those who are wondering.
Oh, and why has nobody picked 1 million yet on the poll? I'm sad about that.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Well, anyway, Steam. So we had a bit of questions. Why did we go to Steam, and how was the Steam going there, and everything related to it? I want to say a few words about that. How to say it nicely. So we wanted to go to Steam. I think like 5 years ago we did a first attempt, but back then it was greenlit, and it was pretty clear that GPL software was very unlikely to make it on there. It had to do that. It looked like you had to integrate with the Steam SDK, which is not GPL licensed, and then you get in some kind of licensing hell you don't want to be in. So basically, we never tried and stepped away from it. But the last few years, a lot of things changed, and Steam now fully allows GPL software to be on there. They even allow not integrating with the Steam stuff. So that's quite nice. So like 2 years ago, we're like, okay, we really want to do it. Well, at least I wanted to do it and was very vocal about it. I think nobody disagreed. But we had the issue of, well, we have to pay $100 to get there. So how are we going to do that? Are we going to use donations for it? Well, how it goes in an open source community, then a lot of talk happens with a lot less doing. So everyone not disagreed that we shouldn't be doing it, but didn't per se agree to do it. Then we agreed to do it and was like, okay, but whose name is going to be on it? Well, that was a whole completely different discussion. In the end, with a big thanks to Orange, we got everything set up from our side and we could pay the $100 fee for Steam. So we set everything up to get the certificate for macOS. But I was to Orange, like, if you did this, can you do Steam? And he was like, shh, don't tell anyone, click, 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 and register to Steam as a game. So that's how we ended up on Steam, not because we have some big plan or some masterminds behind this or whatever, just because someone was pushing long enough and hard enough to make it happen. And nobody disagreeing. That's how things happen. So released on Steam. The thing I greatly misunderestimated is how much effort is going to Steam. They have a very nice onboarding system, really nice, but it takes a lot of work. I had to make over 17, I believe, visuals, which all had to be different. All are ending up on different places. And I'm not a graphic artist. So I was looking for someone to do it, but everyone was like, poof, gone. Good luck with this. See you in the next live. So I ended up making them. So sorry for the poor quality. It's a lot of work. I think it took me in the end about 60 hours or so to get to the whole validation process. They have to validate the game. All kinds of good things just to make sure that you're not putting up shit and some free or copyrighted visuals on there to make a lot of money. Went pretty well, I have to say. Steam was very cooperative, nothing to blame there. So we got on Steam, and then everyone is like, why now? Or why, if not 5 years ago, you're there now? A lot of gatekeepers. It was like, yeah, okay, just be happy we're going there. So we are very happy that a lot of people showed more that they were happy that we go into Steam than people complaining about the fact that we were going non-free or that nonsense. Just to be clear, OpenTTD will always be free. Steam is just another way of us of publishing the game, like we are on the Microsoft Store for years now. But yeah, that's clearly less used because there was lots less complaint about it.
That might actually be one thing we could use this first time. We could use this nice counter in the top corner of the screen, because some of the comments actually were like, oh, nice, we are moving to Steam. No, we not moving to Steam. We never plan to move to Steam. We are also on Steam, but we're not moving to Steam.
Yeah. And so that's why we did it. There's literally nothing more to it. We could, so we did. Then we had a bit of discussion how we're going to Steam, because of course we also see you can integrate it. You have Cloud Save, you have Workshop, you have achievements, you have all that other good stuff. But how are you going to do it? Well, I wrote a gist, and let me see if I can show it.
And looks some short interlude. We went on Steam because we could. There's other, for example, you see via Steam that you can also play on macOS, for example, but we're actually not in the Mac's App Store or the iTunes App Store and everything. This is actually because we can't. Apple doesn't allow GPL software on there, so we can't. As simple as that.
Yeah. So that for the Steam
the
integration.
other thing to say is that the version of OpenTTD on Steam is identical to the one you download on our website. There's no differences at all. It's just a different copy of it. I mean, with OpenGFX and OpenSFX and so forth bundled with it, but
yeah, not even bundled. No. How we did it in our pipeline. We have a fully
yes,
automated.
Of course they are.
Sorry.
Sorry. Yes, you're right.
For our release, we have a fully automated pipeline. So we press a button like release this OpenTTD version, and everything happens automatically. Thank you, GitHub, for making that possible. That's certainly insane.
Very, very satisfying.
Yeah. And one of the steps is make the Windows build and send it to both Steam and our own content delivery network. It's byte for byte the same. So then we get on the topic of integration. Well, I wrote this about this. This is my summary of the licensing blah we have to make that happen. It's a very long page where I try to summarize as much as I could. about how difficult it is for GPL software to integrate with a closed license, which the Steam integration is. Yeah, this is lovely. None of us know anything about it. The first 2 points really hold always. So most of these things have never been to court. So you cannot really know how other games did this or if anyone did this. So we're slowly stepping forward and looking how to do this.
Lots more talking to be done yet.
Yeah, I think most of us are scared shitless about this. There are 2 things to that. One is the public opinion. If you integrate with Steam, people might say you are now non-free because you integrate with Steam. We aren't, but the perception can be created. And we somehow have to deal with that. So we have to be preemptive about it, avoiding people having a lot of gossip and a lot of untruths, and combating that. We can better be ahead of it and making sure that they don't start these kind of talks, which is a completely different sport, I can say. And we have to figure out how we can, for the developers, make this something that we can accept. I mean, in the end, developers are the one in charge. They are the owner of the licenses, and we have to agree that when we do something, we agree with it. And that's not an easy talk. So, for example, directly integration with the Steam SDK, that's not going to happen. That means that we have to relicense our complete software. That's not going to happen. So we need some kind of bridge between the two to make this happen. And even then, not everyone is really enthusiastic about it. I haven't heard anyone say no, but I also have not really seen a lot of people saying, yeah, we should do this. Just from a legal point of view. This has nothing to do with any technical mumble bubble. Technically it's done in days. So yeah, that's where we're at. That's why you're not seeing achievement. That's why you're not seeing network integration. That's why you cannot join via friends yet. It's not technical. I would love if Steam released the SDK on the GPL. That would instantly solve this whole mess. But so we decided that going to Steam is a lot more important than first figuring out this all, not having any clue how many people will play the game on Steam. I mean, 2 weeks ago, you could have told me 100 people would download this. I would have said, I believe you. It turns out the number is slightly higher, and this is the answer to the poll. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to show this, but fuck that. We currently have 263,000 licenses assigned to people. So when we talk about how popular is this game, I can tell you 250,000 people have showed interest in the game. And we know at least 160 people played the game ever. So yeah, as far as this voting goes, 7 people were right. The other most underestimated by Luke. And that shows to us that this is popular on Steam and that we should spend some more time on it, on integrating it. If this number would have been 10, then I'm pretty sure everyone would have said, yeah, it sucks for the people that tried and we're not going to do this. But we honestly had no clue whatsoever. That brings me to one of the last points in Steam, and that's the SteamDB, and especially this part. I think none of us could ever have dreamed that 90% of people would be positive about this game. I like this game, but I grew up with it. I cannot believe so many people left a positive review. So for everyone that did that, thank you. The negative reviews were also very constructive most of the time, which is also very helpful for us. Most too steep of a learning curve, no tutorials, I cannot join my friends in this game, stuff like that. Completely agree with that. So yeah, that was quite an interesting journey.
Oh, yeah, and also another number on here, the all-time peak players of 3,254 somewhere on Easter weekend was actually, I don't have the exact number, but it was like number 230 most played game on Steam, which is like there are 100,000 of games on Steam. So this is huge to be like in the top 200 or top 300. This is like, you have so many professionally developed games below, so it's very, very lot more than we probably expected start going in.
Was quite heartwarming, honestly. And especially when I feel a bit down, I just read the positive reviews on Steam. That's quite nice to do. It's yeah, it makes you want to program again.
It's amazing. An open source project with no dedicated marketing team, no marketing budget. Certainly, we don't have some constant. We have our kind donations which keep bananas running and things like that. But yes, you're right. There's just volunteer project. no big marketing, no sort of PR going to the magazine saying we're going to launch on Steam. Can you get a preview feature? Can you get that? I think Rock Paper Shotgun like covering us just because they love the game. But yeah, that's fantastic to see that it's really so many people out there have enjoyed it.
Indeed. And that brings me to the last part about Steam I want to say about that. It's a workshop integration, which is also a heavily requested thing. There are two sides to that. Again, licensing issues, but I think even if we can solve that, most developers will not like it. And it has to do with that basically means we are splitting our modding community into two. One that delivers via the in-game client, where everyone can enjoy it, and then a part that you can only enjoy if you use Steam. If it goes about the argument, is OpenTTD non-free or is it free? When you start doing that, you tend to go the wrong way. And it is a slippery slope. I'm not saying it's that black and white, but it starts to go the wrong way. And I think many developers agree with that. I'm looking at the rest here, but I haven't heard anyone say we should do this. So
yeah, I think, I mean, this is basically when we say that we are not moving to Steam. So Steam integration itself, yes, it's mostly just a legal problem, but I don't think we want any exclusive Steam features or something. So basically, if we do stuff like workshop, cloud saves, and so, then we want to do that for everybody and not just for those that can use Steam.
yeah. Now we got the question, how many downloads did we get outside of Steam? That's always a hot debate. We can see how much downloads hit our infrastructure, but many people download it outside our infrastructure. That's either via their own package manager, it's via some kind of caching service that they use, or in other ways. So we only see a very small portion of that. We always knew this. And then we say that we are about, I would say, 20% of what we see on Steam. And that matches our expectations of it. So I would say about 20% of the downloads happen outside of Steam. So in total, I would say about 300,000 people downloaded the game in the last week. Yeah, we can correlate a bit how many people download via Bananas, which is also maybe good to add. We don't really keep telemetry. We throw away information as soon as we can. So we keep logs for some time to see abuse, and after that it's pushed from the system. So we don't have a visual like so many people download it purely because we're privacy centered. We don't want that.
Yeah, it's also OpenTTD is also not talking to some server behind your back to tell everybody everything about your system to everybody. So we don't really want that to be some kind of spy software. Of course, if you do run on Steam, then yes, Steam will transmit quite a lot of stuff to Valve, but not because the game does it, but in this case because Steam does it.
Yeah. And then I also saw the question, are you going to Epic and the others? I personally really want to go to Stadia. That's just because I personally like what they did there. I'm not saying I'm a Google fanboy, but I'm just saying I like Stadia. But I think they want control support, which we really do not support. Going to Epic, yes, please. Just someone has to look into. And well, I spent enough hours on Steam, so not it. If someone else wants to pick it up, contact me. We can make it happen. We really don't mind going to more platforms. It just has to be manageable. So we have to be able to automate it, because otherwise we will go insane for the amount of things we have to upload or release to. I don't think anyone is fancying that. So yeah, we have principle no problem with it if they allow GPL software.
Oh yeah, for those that have been long enough around in the development team, there was a time when several release versions or variants were actually hand compiled and uploaded manually and so on for several platforms, and quite often that meant that on the release day, like half our theoretically supported platforms were actually not available for download because the person that did them wasn't around for a few days and only got to them later. So we don't really want to go back to that.
The good old days that you had to trust a fellow developer to not insert a coin miner into binary. That was really awesome days.
I think I still remember. Oh, that's really, really, really old. Just like it after come out that I did the 64 Windows builds. So where it was only Windows XP 64, which was even which actually wasn't even Windows XP, but some other version.
Yeah, fun times. Do you ever make it easier for friends directly? Yeah. That's some work in progress, that you can just join the games with your friends a lot easier. It depends on your network setup. We can't guarantee that's possible, but at least we want to make it a lot easier for like 80% of the people out there. And take it from there, iterations. So that's everything I had said about Steam. I don't know if anyone has anything to add to that or any questions about Steam. We can just close that and continue on. Did any development companies ever reach out to you guys? What kind of reaching out do you mean? Funny enough, I did get contact with some other open source projects that want to go to Steam too, which was quite interesting. We all had the same problem, it turns out, and maybe we should start a chat channel with developers of other games too to figure them out at once instead all one by one. But no,
I don't development companies. I don't remember either. I mean, we had some stuff from things like universities and so that were asking about using that for some kind of teaching and stuff. But this was mostly just, I mean, I don't know if there was actually any time where they actually wanted us to do something, but most of the time they just wanted to have a contact like, hey, can we use that for that? Yeah, of course. I mean, that's, you can, of course, because it's free software. So yes, of course you can.
And what we get a lot, which is really nice with a lot of people, we get a lot of inquiries for SEO, that they want to improve our SEO because we're not high enough on Google. We got a lot of questions if they can redo our website because we tried AdWords, we never did, and they can improve it. And a lot of those other spam mails, funny enough, some of them are to our abuse email box, which is quite interesting to me that you know yourself that you're abusing the system, so you already send it to the abuse to make it easy to block you or something. So we get plenty of those. So if you are interested in a new website or any SEO related, we got you. We can forward you the mails. Please don't.
There's one that I would actually like to know the answer to, and I'm sure I may have seen it back when it started. Why April the 1st?
Why not?
I mean, I don't even know what the initial of, if it actually was just, okay, we are almost ready, so let's pick a nice date. But yeah, it's the joke that keeps on giving.
If I remember correctly, one time on 1st of April, one of the other sysops changed the website to show a very big rabbit when you went to it. That scared the shit out of me because he didn't told me. So I thought someone broke in the server and did a full security audit before he came. 1st of April joke. So I was quite pissed, I can tell you. If I'm not mistaken, the year after, someone was just, well, in my opinion, making fun of that incident and released the game on the 1st of April. And it just never left. I mean, it's too funny.
When was the first release on the 1st?
You just have to look at the pre-release discussion threads on Steam. Like Steam on April 1st has to be a joke. Can't be anything else. Has to be a joke.
Yeah, I saw other games releasing on the 2nd of April. So I think a lot of companies are scared of doing it on the 1st. But I think it suits the type of developers OpenTTD has. And it really should be on the 1st. It's the only way. I hope that answers the question. So what date we have more for questions? I like the question, but it's a bit of a completely different subject. So I'm switching gears here, sorry. Speaking about diversity and inclusion, I've never seen a female developer. Yeah, sorry to break it to you. I haven't seen most of you. Last I checked, we have 109 contributors. I cannot tell you what race they're from, what sex they have, what country they come from. And quite honestly, I also don't give a fuck. I'm quite happy with anyone that delivers any code in any form, and we're happy to help anyone. We are quite inclusive like that. That's the best part about chat. You don't know who's on the other side. You can guess, and that's about it. Time zones are the easiest one to guess. Now on Livestream, I see that most of ours are male, which is sadly enough in IT mostly dominating still. Something we can do about it. From my perspective, all I can say, we don't care. We really do not care.
Yeah, basically, I mean, there's currently nobody that is self-identified as female, but in the end, maybe some are. They just don't tell us, and we don't ask. We doesn't matter. So it's not required information to contribute.
I hope that answers the question a bit. I know it's a bit on the political side, but yeah, I can't say anything else about it.
Yeah, it's sort of for me. I would love to see it. Like when I'm looking at the YouTube stats, and Timberwolf stuff has just the most horrific stats, because you go and look at the gender balance, and it's just 100% male. It says, and I would, I'd love to see a much more diverse OpenTTD community, like around the whole thing, around streams, around new graph, around development. Obviously, we don't want to force people to self-identify. We don't want to go collecting information. But like for me, some of my memories back in 94, 95 were my younger stepsister used to play Transport Tycoon just as much as I did. So it's kind of sad that you see a community that's not got that, the mix now. But there you go. Yes, yeah, something I would love to see. But
yeah, and I got a nice addendum on the 1st of April joke. Some things people are whispering us all kinds of things, but this one is funny. Rubidium lead developer back in these days said, "We are messing around 364 days of the year. We do serious stuff on the 1st of April." That's quite covering OpenTTD.
Very, very stressful. Has anything been broken in the last day or so?
It's a week of stress, that's for sure. I'm surprised by how little bug reports we got. I'm always really happy about that. I mean, we have a few crashes, but out of the thousands of people that played it, it's really a low amount.
Yeah, seeing that we actually pushed a crazy amount of features directly before the release, feature freeze. Don't care this year.
Yeah.
I mean, we had years where we basically had almost where we had the beta in basically on Christmas and had almost no features for the next 3 months and still had a lot of bugs. And this time actually surprisingly few bugs for that we rewrote surprisingly much of the game.
I'm still surprised the video drivers don't crash a lot more often. But yeah. Do you have any office LAN parties playing OpenTTD competitively? If not, why not? Well, back in my day.
I have seen LAN parties playing OpenTTD. Not office LAN parties, but LAN parties.
Yeah, back when LAN parties existed. I thought when I got to LAN parties like 10 years ago, the OpenTTD was often one of the games. Just played on the background while they were playing other games, which was quite nice. But the one instance that stand out, we once had a company reaching out to us. They wanted to have an AI competition. So we say, yeah, sure, we want to help, but what do you need? Well, they didn't need much, but they opened their office for AI competition and people could subscribe to it. Many of the AIs we have are founded because of the competition, so it was quite nice for us. And they competed with each other. And I think the one that won was the AI that cheated. It bought this train, went to the destination, sold it there, bought a new one, sent it over because they don't have to trip back, which was quite ingenious. But that company opened their doors. We were let in. We had food. We had a great laugh. For them, of course, it was a recruitment drive, but it was awesome. Sadly enough, it's the only one I know about.
Yeah. Slight historical correction. I think it was actually road vehicles because they are a lot easier for AI programming to handle.
yeah, it was Rondier Omdekerk, and that it had the whole silver vehicles at the end of the journey.
Sorry,
And
we have to try this. Sorry, rondje rond de kerk. You can do this. Come on, come on. Sorry.
Rondier Omdekerk.
It's seriously not bad. You get this from me. Sorry, continue.
So what it did was, as well as selling road vehicles at the end, they'd coded it with the length of the AI competition, which I think was something like 10 years. So at the 10-year deadline, it just went, anything that's not close to its destination, send it to the depot and just sell it, just to give that last final little boost.
It also built a load of stations as well, because there's
yes.
some advantage of that.
Oh, yes,
Of
it's
The competition, but the one on bananas doesn't do that anymore, obviously.
yeah, company value. That was it. Yes, because stations increase your company value unexpectedly.
Yeah, I mean this I at least in the initial version was purely coded to win this one competition, not really to be a good opponent for a human player.
Yes, technically not cheating, no, but far beyond what any human could achieve.
The actions per minute were a bit
Unlike, of
insane.
course, the original TTD AI, which we removed
That was
to make
cheating.
way for all of this, that did cheat because it had no cost for terrain modifications, I think. Yeah.
Landscaping was free, and it did very silly things. And there was a lot of outrage when we removed it. Don't know why people were really upset about it.
That's why I'm here.
Well, I'm happy that we did it.
I was one of the ones that was outraged by it, and then I made an AI, and then I stuck around.
That was a good move. Oh, I'm going to say. Are you planning to add Steam service multiplayer support? Well, like I said before, we do plan to join game, but Steam also has dedicated servers. Basically, they say we allow you to have dedicated servers if you also host your own dedicated servers, and we cannot afford that. So no, that's never going to happen.
It's not a question as such, but it's a statement. XP is obsolete and unsafe. Yes, it is. This is why we no longer build stuff for XP. We no longer provide builds. I mean, if you are one of those extremely few people out there who is for whatever reason still running XP, you can build it yourself and it will still work. But because it has been out of support for 7 years now, and was extreme end of its life at that point anyway, yeah, it's not wouldn't be responsible for us to release builds for that platform in the same way that we don't release builds for really ancient versions of Mac OS or ancient versions of Linux and so forth.
Even Ubuntu that's out of end of life, we no longer support. We have to go with it. You can't be keeping
it might work if you do it hard enough, but we're not supporting it.
You can even build it on DOS if you're really clever, but really.
I know it's much more difficult to build it on DOS these days, or Windows 9 MX, 90, 95, 98 ME, because all the Unicode stuff is gone now, or required now rather. So.
Fair point. Unicode, yay. Never say Windows ME again. Please go sit in the corner now. This is no. Any thoughts of offering Microsoft Realms type of service? Well, honestly, I have thought about it. I've thought about a lot of these things, but the issue is money. We cannot afford to do that, so we have to charge money. And how the hell are we going to do this open source? So no. I guess if someone really wants to, it can set up his own service. I mean, people are free to make a SaaS for that. I think it will be difficult to find people that want to pay for it. And doing it for free, OpenTTD is way too demanding on CPU to do that. It's not proportional. So I do not see that happen.
I mean, it's mostly money. I mean, it's in no way forbidden to charge money for GPL software in that sense. So it's not a legal problem, but indeed it would use a lot of resources, and somebody has to pay for those resources.
Ever thought about a WASM version? Yes, it's
even
working. Yeah. WASM is that you can play it in your browser, or you can play OpenTTD in your browser. We made it available for previews for changes people make. So every change can have the preview label, so you can play it from your browser. We do not have a big play now button on the front page, although I would love that. But multiplayer is simply not working in any way I would find reasonable.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, it's also a bit. I think at least just downloading wouldn't be that much of a problem. But of course, it's also some bandwidth and so on. So it would cost some money. But I think just the download wouldn't be that bad, I think.
Yeah, so until we solve mostly the multiplayer issue, and the other is threading, that's not possible at the moment. It's not in any form I would want to put on a front page. I mean, if you put it there, it really has to work. It really has to shine there, and it currently doesn't. So you can play with it yourself. Some people already picked it up and put it on their own website. You're more than fine to do so. But yeah, no, not yet.
But it's worth saying how brilliant it is for testing out new features. It's just, oh, click button, load game, click. Oh, it's there. I don't need to worry about checking it out, compiling it, and all of that stuff, and actually working out where the change is. It's made testing such features so much easier, and indeed has already been used to find, oh, that's not actually working as it should, which just wouldn't have been noticed from just looking at the code.
Oh, definitely. For anything that's especially for anything that's some kind of visual thing. So that's actually changing something you can see on screen. It's really nice. I mean, something that's basically just code refactoring. I mean, sure, you can use a preview, you can look at it, but it's probably to really validate it, you often have to check with the debugger and stuff, and you can't do that with the Wasm build. So, but for anything that's like GUI or whatever, it's really nice.
Yeah, there are weeks I play more OpenTTD in the browser than I play it on my desktop, just to test out if the interface looks nice and stuff like that.
Speaking of that, we had a question some time ago, actually, that we might actually want to answer again. What is OpenTTD actually, and how it relates to Transport Tycoon Deluxe? And in this case, so the question was if it's related to that. So it's not related in the sense that I mean, we don't have anything to do with Chris Sawyer or Microprose who originally developed Transport Tycoon Deluxe. OpenTTD is a re-implementation from Transport Tycoon Deluxe, which at least in its initial version basically tried to replicate Transport Tycoon as good as possible. That was the initial goal for the very first version.
Spiraled from there.
Spiral is the correct word. We start touching it, it's really bad.
Yeah. It
was perfect, and then we kept adding stuff.
It's incredible how much that's been added. You start taking for granted. So I occasionally load up in DOSBox, load up Transport Tycoon Deluxe, usually to check something and go, oh, was that in the original or not? And there's things like every so often I will hit something like, I'll go, where's the clone vehicle? Oh wait, clone vehicle's an OpenTTD thing, isn't it? But yeah, things like so if you do happen to find some with an old copy that you can play, there's no building on slopes, there's no sort of foundations, there's no clone vehicle, there's no auto replace. You can't even drag diagonal tracks. And I think there's something else that I forget. There was somewhere where you couldn't build. Oh no, that was original Transport Tycoon. I think you couldn't even build signals on diagonal track. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff that's been added that you kind of even forget that's quality of life and improvements.
And now we play the game Guess the Age of Timberwolf. No, sorry. Sorry, that was me.
You could do a poll. This is always good fun.
Well, if you make it, that's fine. Let's pick up the next question. I now stepped into something I want to really get out of really quick. So how about rename the game? No, simple answer. OpenTTD is a name that everyone knows, so renaming it now is no. At least as far as I'm concerned, but I don't think anyone would disagree.
It's a question about raising the limit of stations. Wherever it's gone, I've lost it. But
possible raise to train and a station length limits, like 64 long trains for long distance.
I mean, yes, we could, but equally we have to at least try to balance stuff around the 256 size map, which is the default, and 64 tires is already a quarter of the length of the map, and indeed the full length of the map if you want to use a small tiny map. So, and then you're using these huge stations against a single 3x4 industry, or maybe a 20x20 town at max, and it just looks a bit silly.
I mean, not just for that map size. I think, I mean, OpenTTD is already unbalanced enough, so we want to at least have a tiny bit of balance left.
Yes, I mean, you can already teleport stuff across the map with disconnected stations, which can be abused quite easily if you know how. And it's
Like this question, what are your overall plans for the game? Well, I think we can be very short about that. Whatever fancies our boat. We have literally no roadmap whatsoever. A lot of ideas, but nothing that is like concrete until it's done. I would like to redo the UI. I would like to finish this multiplayer easier to join. I would like, and I can name you 20 more things. We will see.
There used to be roadmaps on the old wiki. Probably about 10 years ago now. There used to be roadmap pages which had some things on which mostly were lies.
I think those pages were made by many people, but actually no dev ever actually touched them, I think.
Only remove them once in a while.
We have some things that we'd like to get done, but maybe they will, maybe they won't.
In the end, the roadmap is whatever people who turn up do.
The thing as well with those roadmaps back in the day, they were things like 0.4 will implement these things from Transport Tycoon Deluxe, 0.5 will implement these things from TTD, and these things from TTD patch, and then so on. So a lot of the early roadmaps were just feature parity with what was already out there, and with TTD patch, and then a kind of I think it's about 0.7 or 0.8 where it just the ability to change the source code rather than trying to patch what was a running executable. Just we could kind of do more just because it's easier if you have your own source code. And at that point, that's where we started kind of heading away from TCD patch and started adding the larger maps and all of the features and all of the various because the new graph spec started diverging as well. I think there's things which work differently in OpenTTD now.
Could you perhaps want to explain the relationship with TTD patch, which I don't think was touched on?
Oh, yes, because this is something that certainly for people who just joined the Steam, they won't have gone through the whole history. So let's go back. So 1994, there was Transport Tycoon, which the first Crusader game didn't even have one-way signals. There's then Transport Tycoon with World Editor, which added the ability to create your own scenarios. Also had these Mars graphics. And then Transport Tycoon Deluxe in 95 introduced one-way signals, introduced the 4 climates, most of the things that we know now.
Win32 build.
Yes. Oh, yes. And then there's a company called Fish UK who a year after that made a build for Windows 95. But towards the end of the 90s, it started to become two kind of things happened. One is it started to become harder to find computers that could actually run those versions of Transport Tycoon. And also some of the limitations, like I think only 80 road vehicles, also like only 80 trains, only 120 stations, or something like that. Those
money limit as well.
Yeah, the money limits. Those start to become really quite painful. And Josef Drexler came up with TTD patch, which both helped running the thing on more modern systems, disabled some of the things in the Win95 version, which stopped it running on Win98 and NT, and also started adding extra features. So things like mammoth trains, so having trains that were more than five tiles long, things like adding realistic acceleration, I think was one of the early things. And then eventually this idea of something called NewGraph, which was you could actually inject your own graphics into the game using sort of NFO and compiling them. So that existed, and that was done sort of late 90s. And actually by the point of the the kind of the early 2000s, had become very sophisticated in as much as you could do, with the fact that it wasn't like OpenTTD, where it's a program you compile from source. It was almost like a kind of trainer or patch or something that you run with the original Transport Tycoon Deluxe executable. So there are limitations what you could do. So you can't go changing the GUI. So early versions of TTD patch used to have things like, it had a rail conversion tool. You could convert from railway to monorail, but you did it by placing a sign and typing something like CHT:rail type 02, because that was the only UI that you could put in early on, was just watch the memory, watch the sort of signs array and see, has someone placed a sign with this? So OpenTTD, Ludwig Striges created it in 2004. They sort of started kind of reverse engineering what was there, and when, what do you need in order to load the original Transport Tycoon graphics, what do you need in order to replicate the gameplay. But at that point, TTD patch was really, really very advanced. In 2004, had lots of features for new graph, had realistic acceleration, all these train things, had sort of limit raising things, so on and so forth. So a lot of the early development with OpenTTD was first just get it to feature parity with Transport Tycoon Deluxe, make sure that you can do all the things you can do in Transport Tycoon Deluxe in OpenTTD, and then catching up on I think probably 7-8 years of development of TTD patch, and those kind of slowly caught up and started reaching parity. And then there was a point, and this is the point for me, I think it's 0.5, when someone introduced a patch that said, oh, you can make maps up to 1024 by 1024. And suddenly that was like the killer feature, because that was the first time that OpenTTD had something where it was like, you cannot do this in TTD patch. This is not a limit that you can raise at this point. And it was still there was still a lot of things you lost, like realistic acceleration, which at the time, the TTD patch one was way more sophisticated. I think some of the more esoteric new graph options took a while to come in, but you suddenly were like, wow, I can play this thing on a 1024 by 1024 map, even if it's just with the original sort of Ginzo A4 and SH Hendry 25. That it was like, wow, there's really something in this. These guys aren't just making something that doesn't need to be made, because we already have TTD patch. And of course, well, here we are 17 years later.
Damn, dude, you know your history. Holy crap. Mad respect.
Yeah, with that, and actually looking at the clock in the corner here, we should start thinking about wrapping up soon. And for that, I actually spotted the perfect closing question here from Mr. G-Core, which is, why did you start modifying this game, and what is for you the biggest improvement made to OpenTTD? So I'll just I go first. I mean, I knew about OpenTTD before I started developing for it, and the first patch I actually had included was shortly after the first 64-bit AMD CPUs came out, and what was called Windows XP 64-bit edition, which was actually a modified Windows 2003 server, I think. And actually I just, hey, this is cool, I have a CPU for that, okay, let's install it and check. And basically at this time, more or less every program you started was still a 32-bit program, because nothing was ported yet. So I just thought, okay, well, now I have a 64-bit operating system. I want something to run in 64-bit. So the actually very first patch from mine that was included was make OpenTTD compile with Visual Studio for 64-bit Windows. This was the very first patch that was included for me.
And what's your biggest improvement?
Well, it's actually depending how you read it. The actual question says, what is the biggest improvement made? It doesn't say made by ourselves. So
what is for you the biggest improvement? I think it's a nice one for you. Yes. Okay. It's not by you. I agree.
Yeah, actually, I probably answer both. Justine said, yeah, maybe it wasn't called XP 64-bit edition, but something. There was an Itanium version and an AMD 64 version.
There was
Could
indeed
have,
an AMD 64. I did the same. So I
yeah,
completely, yeah.
could have been quite different. I mean, I would have to look that up how it was actually called, but there was some AMD 64-bit version too, which whatever name. Yeah. Okay. So basically, what's the biggest improvement in OpenTTD in itself? That's actually a really hard question, but I would actually say the biggest improvement, which sadly has a lot of potential still open, is the whole AI game scripting system, because it actually opens so many possibilities that are sadly still not really that much used, I have to say. And just to make this the biggest improvement to the game, personally, I mean, most of the things I've done are actually not really player visible, but basically I would still say it's path signals, because it's the first big thing I actually did for OpenTTD.
Nice. I'll take it next. When did you start modifying this game? It's back in 2004 that I started. I downloaded the
Real
game and I was really annoyed that maps could only be 256 by 256. So I was like, this cannot be difficult to solve. So I went to the ISC and I said, this cannot be difficult for you to add. So they laughed at me and they told me, go do it yourself if you think this is easy. So I did. And then they were like, oh my God, this is impossible. You should not be doing it like this. And it took like a few months of me constant nagging them, look at my patch, look at my patch, look at my patch. Back then they were not all too, well, maybe we still aren't too friendly for new patches. I don't know how that changed, but it took me weeks of nagging. Then finally someone said, okay, fuck this shit. He picked up my patch and included it in trunk back then. That was my very first patch. The one I actually got included myself because he rewrote it is the face changing, that you could change the face of the president. I cannot remember how, really, it's 7 years ago. I just fuzzy remember that I was really proud about that. So yeah, very long ago. What's the biggest improvement for the game for me are two things. One is the complete network rewrite, so that you could finally stable play with each other. Before that, it was some kind of crappy protocol that desynced really quickly. So we picked it up, and I think that's one of the biggest. And the other one is, I have to say, and I wrote both myself, so it's a bit, I don't know, sorry about that, is the AI framework. I really like that it's giving the option to many people to explore how programming works in a very complex game. I've seen many people try and start with AIs, ARO, and that's one of the biggest improvements for me for OpenTTD.
Yeah, I mean, I might as well carry on with that. It's got to be that, because that's what brought me here in the first place. In terms of actually things that I added, I think my first one was actually adding a function to that interface. Maybe something to do with getting town names or something like that. It's a very simple one-liner, but obviously, because I barely had any idea what programming was at the time, it took me weeks to actually work out what all that was. And yeah, the biggest thing that I've added is of the text files. I mentioned that before. I mean, again, I had a lot of help with that. I mean, most of my other stuff has always been in the background, so not necessarily user visible or particularly big, just lots of little bits and pieces. And yeah, biggest improvement has got to be scripting.
Well, I'll leave you for closing, Timberwolf.
Yeah, let's go. So there's a big gap between first time I started hacking on OpenTTD and first actual public thing I did, which was the first time I started hacking was that talk about large maps was I spent a lot of time basically in putting in realistic acceleration patches for my own use and to play with friends on that, back when it's written in C, before the C++ move. And then I kind of stopped because the move to C++ broke the kind of the patch which I was always applying. And then obviously I came via new graph development, and that drove the first patch thing which I submitted as a pull request, which was I was building roads, Timberwolf roads, and I was noticing that when I was placing road stops in the middle of towns, they were breaking. And it's like, why is that? Oh, that's actually a bug. So I submitted what ended up being I think a one-line fix for that. So yeah, greatest feature overall. Well, obviously, there's new graph and large maps, but let's go for a controversial. Let's say extra zoom and 2x, because, and I think partly obviously it's a personal bias there, but I think that I probably would not have had the kind of inspiration to go, well, I'm going to make trains, I'm going to make road vehicles, if there hasn't been that kind of unused technical leap to go for in new graph. So obviously that has just been there. And greatest personal thing has been the changes to the sprite resolver, which are very sort of low level technical, but I love that because you're coming to something which existed for 17 years, and in a certain particular use case, you have a huge speed up. And that was wonderfully rewarded to go, actually, this is kind of somewhere between 20% and I think it's like 4 times as fast with Timberwolf's trains, which is really slow to resolve sprites. So the fact that that opportunity that was there in such a mature code base, but also the fact that all of the existing development team, when I put in this pull request, going, oh yeah, by the way, I'm just going to rewrite the way that sprites are resolved when they need to be displayed on screen. Didn't just say go away, but actually,
I think some of us were thinking it, because I mean, there was a change maybe about a year before, which tried something similar in the sprite resolver and just broke everything, and we had to
Oh yeah, there were
revert it back
probably
again.
there's probably
It's
more
like
than one abundant try with sprite resolving and sprite sorting. There are lots of tries that didn't work out.
Because literally, pull request came in, I was like, I'm not touching this. I'm fine with any, but I'm not touching that. I'm happy someone else did. But I do love, Timberwolf, that we said our greatest regret is extra zoom, and you're like, the best improvement is extra zoom. It shows the contradiction in the whole of OpenTTD community, which I absolutely love. It's
yeah. Well, I maintain that the org gripe is we've rendered sprites versus Foster style sprites. So, I'm very much in the extra zoom, but it's got to look like it's like, what would Simon Foster have done if he'd had access to this greater resolution?
We should make that a quote on the website.
Timberwolf's base set when.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, ignoring the fact of locomotion, which just says make everything brown, but
Okay, I think these were the perfect closing words for stream today. Short service announcement, at least at this point in time, we don't have next stream planned, so I don't think we want to wait a year or something, but at least right now we don't have anything planned for now. But if we do plan something, we will let you know about over the usual channels.
Yeah, thank you. They've been fantastic questions as well. Where we were sort of chatting before, we were like a little bit nervous of oh, good, are we just going? Are we going to get the same 5? But no, they really good and really sort of, you call it high standard of questions, I guess.
We expect another type of question, so this was a welcome difference to the expectation. So thank you guys for that.
Yeah, indeed. We actually had, these were good questions. I mean, we were afraid that it would either be like the same question 20 times or a lot more basic questions. But yeah, I think it's very good questions, even if we probably missed half of the interesting ones. But it's sometimes it's hard to keep everything in mind and in track and not lose track of it.
Okay, thank you guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.